Welcome, everybody, once again to Irish Sports Daily Power Hour. I'm your host, Mike Frank, here with my good buddy, Jamie Uyeyama, and we're going to talk some spring games, some recruiting. We're going to answer your questions, all Notre Dame football this weekend, or I mean, during this broadcast. Wanted to mention, if you are not a member of Irish Sports Daily, you can go to the front page, click on the premium section, and sign up. There's a lot going on right now with recruiting. Things are really going to heat up now. There's a big weekend this weekend. We have lots of updates about how Notre Dame did with a lot of their top prospects. And of course, Jamie will have a lot of analysis over spring and all that type of stuff. And so if you're not a member, it's a great time to sign up. Also, wanted to make sure you have become a member of our YouTube channel as well. So if you search on YouTube, search for Irish Sports Daily. And if you would subscribe and like the channel, we'd greatly appreciate that. Also wanted to mention our sponsor, which is ESQ Clothing, founded by ND alum Ge Wang. You've seen ESQ on all your favorite Notre Dame players and coaches. From All-Americans to All-Pros and associates to CEOs, you're in great hands with ESQ Custom Clothing. Whether you're looking for a perfect fitting suit, a standout sport coat, or a perfect tuxedo for weddings, galas, ESQ Master Tailor blend traditional hand stitching in each garment with Italy and England's top fabrics. Go check out Ge's amazing work at esqclothing.com and book an appointment to upgrade your wardrobe today. Mention ISD and get 10% off your entire purchase. Once again, that's esqclothing.com. All right, Yama. So spring game, there's not a lot you can learn. It's kind of a boring, I don't want to say boring, but it was, it is what it is. I like that they went ones versus ones. You could see some things. You could see it was stud. It wasn't tackle, but, I liked when they go good on good. I think you get a better understanding of some things. But I think the whole idea is let's get out there. Let's put a show together for the fans. And let's not get anybody hurt. I think that's really the whole game plan for all of this. And you just try and make sure that you do everything you can to not get anybody hurt. Obviously, Leonard Moore didn't play, had a little thing on his wrist. Kirby Lambert didn't play. Guys like Drake Bowen weren't expected to play. So you're not going to get a full look at what you're going to look at as far as Notre Dame's first team O or first team D or any of that type of stuff. But, you do get a chance to kind of see some people show out and do some things. And, it's like we were texting during the game. And of course, Ethan Long makes a couple plays, which every time we watch Ethan Long, he continues to make plays. And you're just like, man, why is this guy Johnny on the spot? It reminds you of X Watts. He is always around the ball. And you're just like, well, that's what this guy does. That's just how he is. And he was responsible really for 2 of the interceptions and just a really talented player that I think a lot of people overlooked. I watched a lot of things, saw some good things from Notre Dame's offensive line, but also saw some good things from Notre Dame's interior defensive line. I thought linebackers, I thought Teddy Rizak and Koakia look good. They did some nice things there, look solid. Man, if those are your number 3s, you got to feel pretty good about that. And they're probably not even number 3 at this point when you consider that you got to throw Madden in there, who hasn't played a whole lot yet. So there's a lot of things to get positive about. Running game looked okay, about what we'd expect. I like seeing that they put Aeneas in there to get banged a little bit and, banged around a little bit. And that shows that I think he's real close to being ready. And as he said, he could have played, but, the medical people may think differently. But overall, just your impressions of what you saw, Devin Fitzgerald, Elijah Burris, 2 guys that are, young kids that we see emerging. Thoughts here on the whole overall experience.
Yeah, I really like that they went like the full first units. Like I thought that was way better than the previous years when they've done the draft. I know it's like a fun thing when they do the draft, but it's just not quite the same, like in terms of just what they're. If you have a mishmash of guys, it's not at all. It's not at all the same. What when you see breakdowns, you see a lot of things that just makes it even sloppier, and it's already going to be sloppy because it's a spring game, right? And when there's a thud aspect to it, it's never going to look totally clean. And obviously the offense came out, pretty wonky. I would,
Sluggish. Yeah.
sluggish, right? And but I just thought there was a lot of stuff to like there overall, just from everybody, right? Like I thought, we didn't get to see Blakey Bear in the Jersey scrimmage. And you know what? I thought he looked pretty good. Like I
Yeah.
thought he looked pretty good. That touchdown pass to Elijah Burris was a big time. That was a big time
throw.
throw, right?
Yeah.
Grubbs obviously had some good there too. I thought up front there was a lot of good stuff from a lot of the young defensive linemen. Obviously, Rodney Dunham stands out. Like he is a dude. He is going to be a factor. But I just thought that Davion Dixon was somebody that
very impressive.
Yeah, and we had heard good stuff about him. So I know there's a question, and with some of the questions that people have for us from ISD of like if there's anyone who's surprised, and I didn't really think there was anyone who's surprised because pretty much everyone that did something good was like we've heard good things about or have seen good things for them already. But I just think there was just a lot of good from you just saw that is to me is exactly what that kind of spring game kind of exhibition is for, right? You get Devin Fitzgerald, he scores a touchdown. Perez scores a touchdown. You get a little bit of Aeneas Williams where he's lined up out wide and he catches a slant. You get Rodney Dunham showing some stuff. You get Ethan Long, with the pick and a big day and all that. So you finish it off where you get all the pressures on Spencer Pratt makes the kick, right? Which isn't surprising based on the spring he had, but when you consider all the problems that they had last year at kicker, it's big. It's really big. So I just thought it was overall a really good day for that kind of thing. What can you learn from it overall? Probably not a lot, but it just kind of adds to it. We saw the Jersey scrimmage last week. You learn more from that. And then we heard of them scrimmaging during this week too. And there's going to be more things that stand out there. But just a lot of good overall. It's a really, really talented roster.
Yeah. Yeah, I just, you mentioned Dixon. I thought Sean Sevillano did some nice things in there. I liked what I saw from him, and, watched Will Black quite a bit. I thought, hey, pretty good. Looks like he's going to be a pretty good player. Matty Augustine, he gets kind of thrust in there, and all of a sudden now he's got to play against some pretty good players. And I thought he held his own pretty well for a guy that was just kind of being thrown in there, at least with the first team. And I saw a lot of things. Even Cam Heron. I really like Cam Heron. You know what I like about him, Jamie? He gets to that next level so quickly. And I watched Koa and Teddy Rizak, and he got to those guys really, really quick and made it difficult for them to kind of shield those blocks and get off those blocks. And, I think snaps need to be a little bit better from that second and third center. They need to get, I saw too many kind of bad snaps. They got to get that cleaned up. And that was a problem in the Jersey scrimmage, if I remember right. I wasn't there, but, we read a lot about it. So, those kind of little things need to be cleaned up. But overall, it's just the depth of this team is really good. And, they'll be able to overcome some injuries and things like that. But gosh, you just see so many guys that are second string. You're like, man, these guys would start at a lot of places. And there's some third team guys that would start at a lot of places. There really are. I mean, you could put Sevillano and Dixon at a lot of schools and they'd start. They'd certainly be in the 2 deep rotation at a lot of schools. Now, would they be Ohio State? Probably not. But, I could see them dominant at Purdue or someplace like that they'd be really, really good football players. So it's a nice problem to have. I watched the second string O-line and thought, okay, well, Styles Prescott, I thought hey, there's some progress here. He didn't look out of sorts in any way. I watched Grayson McHugh. I thought he looked pretty good most of the time. Um, Charlie Tom, I was like, oh, okay, let's see what he does. And so I just looked at a lot of different guys, and I'm overall impressed. And I think when you talk about ones versus ones and keeping the unit together, I think it's hard for a coach to really evaluate where you are unless the guy that you're going to be playing next to is there with you, right? Because sometimes when you're out there on the field, Jamie, and you know that a guy that you're not used to playing with is lined up or not doing what he's supposed to be doing,
Yeah.
sometimes you try and overcompensate for that mistake. And so you don't really get a good read, and it's kind of like almost a wasted practice, I think, when you try and split all this up, and these guys aren't playing next to the guys that they're gonna be playing with, and so I do like that. I think that's important. And then I thought Jonas Walton showed, hey, here's a guy that pretty good player. I was impressed with him. I think he's going to have a chance to be a pretty special player. Now, the other thing I think, Jamie, is no injuries, really. I mean, obviously Joey O'Brien came out, was kind of limping around on crutches and everything. If you watch the replay, it looked like he rolled his ankle. It looked more like a high ankle sprain than anything. They'll be able to get that taken care of within a month. Just give him time to, relax and everything, and get off it, and let the whole thing heal completely. So he'll be 100% ready to go by fall. But it's rare that you get through spring practice without at least one catastrophic injury, and they really didn't have one. And
Yeah.
that's wonderful. That's really, really wonderful.
Yeah.
A lot of times you'll have two or three. And let's be honest, they were, we saw from from practice one, this was no, walk-through practices that they were having. They were hitting from the very word go. And so it was a physical spring, and to come out of it without that's a good thing. I'm very happy about that. Thoughts here?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, yeah, there wasn't that injury during spring that is going to affect the season in a negative way. And all all you want is to come out of it, especially with your top guys, right? Which is why, like, I don't care if Leonard Moore had a wrist thing or not. He did not need to be on the field at all,
Yeah.
at all, at all.
Yes.
It just did. He just didn't need to, right? And it's the same thing. You could even have said the same thing if CJ Carr, if they were hitting or something like that, then you would say there's no way he'd be playing, right? So why would you put any kind of situation where Moore could get hurt or anything? It just makes no sense, right? And I think too, like, Bowen probably could have done stuff in that game, and like there's other guys who would have been able to do more if it was actually during the season. What's the point? There is no point to any of that. So I love that there was such a huge crowd. Like,
Yeah.
normally, like, I think it was the second largest announced crowd that they've had since the Jimmy Clausen game in
Yeah.
2007. Which obviously that was like a really huge deal when that happened.
Oh yeah.
But this was something I think it just shows too that there's obviously a lot of excitement about where the program is and where things are under Freeman, about the team and all that too. But all the alumni that were back, Jeremiah Love just got drafted in the first round and was there. Like, that was like almost shocking that he was there, but really cool that he was able to come out. So, yeah, I just thought they did it really well. Where you and I have been to some of these blue gold games, Mike, where it is not an environment that maybe is good for recruits.
Yeah.
At Notre Dame, at some of these other schools, you can see it when they have, like, hey, they sell out like 80,000 fans at some of these schools. Oh, yeah. But when it's Notre Dame and if there's like 15,000 in an 80,000 seat stadium and it just looks empty and it's kind of dead and there's already the atmosphere is kind of whatever dull too, it just doesn't work good. But when you have over 40,000 people there and you bring all these alumni, and they've really done a good job of making that like an event for people to come back to, you got to give Marcus Friedman, just everyone just involved with the program, a lot of credit for that. They just make it a big deal in a way that where it's not a big deal in terms of what they're doing, in terms of this is going to show you what the team is, but they make it a big deal like this is an event.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt about it. Now, when we went into this, I think we had some questions. Who was going to help in pass rush, right? Who was going to be the guys that we can count on? And I want to mention like Keon Keeley. I watched him, and I heard he had a really good Jersey scrimmage and a good day yesterday or the Friday before practice. And then I thought he did some nice things in the game as well. Ronnie Dunham, we know he's going to be a guy now, right? Because we're like, can Logan Thomas do anything? Can he help? Well, they don't need Logan Thomas to do anything. They got Rodney Dunham at this point, right? And it's obvious that he can play, and not only can he just play on third down, but he seems to be able to hold his own fairly well against the run. Give him, 30 more practices doing that, and before the season starts, and then a couple games, and when you really need him, I think he's going to be somebody who can really show out and help you. We didn't know what to expect. D-line, can they stop the run? I'm not sure we got a good gauge on that at this point yet, because I think that there was so much going on with spring practice and so many things with install and this and that. You're just not sure what you got there. Plus Notre Dame's rotation, they're always trying to look at different things and blah, blah, blah. So I'm not sure we know exactly 100% that they can, but I feel better about it just by watching all the guys play. We saw a lot of guys kind of elevate from where they were to being better, more complete players at this point. So I feel better about that. Will Black, how's that going to look? And Sullivan Absher and Joe Otting, are they willing to and able to step up to what the standard is? And feel pretty good about that. Wide receiver, how you looking there? Do you have some playmakers? We know about Faison, but we don't know about anybody else really at this point. Didn't get to see Greathouse much. That's weird, man. I would think that hamstring, I don't know. That just seems weird that it's still not 100%. We'll talk about that here in a minute, but, didn't get to see him much, but we're seeing guys like Fitzgerald and Barres. We keep hearing about both guys, kind of really elevating and guys who you could possibly count on. And then, Logan Saldate and Mylan Graham. We haven't even added Quincy Porter to the mix yet. So, I mean, this is a lot of the questions that we thought were going to be somewhat of a concern. Can you answer those questions? I feel like we have pretty good answers at this point. Your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, I think too, like even with the Greathouse thing, it's like I don't even think it's something to worry about until like if he's like, well, they're taking it easy on him in August, then it's like, okay, like what are we doing here? Then it's obviously bad. But and they've notoriously rushed guys back from hamstrings, and it's become like a problem before. Like that has been a thing, during Freeman times and before, obviously, people can put two and two together, but like it has been a thing. So I just think that, you look at it too, there's still Chris Ash brought it up too. They're building depth on defense. And if you think about it, there's a lot of guys that were out on defense that are going to be like pretty big factors. Obviously you got Bowen and KVA. Two guys in the middle. When we're talking about stopping the run, like those are two pretty big pieces of it. Jason Onye, right? You have a guy like Kari Adams. I don't know where Kari Adams is going to be this year, but he might be talented enough to play right away, right? Like to at least get himself in the mix. Dallas Golden missed like basically the second half of spring, right? There's just a lot of talented guys that will have a shot to do something. I think the only thing that really you come out of spring and where you don't know is tight end wise in terms of what their production will be in the passing game. And I know Mike Denbrock was asked about it afterwards. We didn't see it at Jersey scrimmage, didn't really see it in this game. Like they're not even targeting those guys. They're
Yeah.
not calling plays from them. So it's tough to say, like, this is what you should expect, where Eli Reardon, they're running like middle screens and stuff for him. And they probably don't feel it. But I do think what Denbrock said about the tight ends, like run game wise and what they can offer there, I think that is going to be, it's very evident from what I saw and from what Denbrock said. That's going to be a big factor. But we've also seen, like, I remember 2015, Mike, Durham Smythe. I remember he was supposed to be, more of a factor there. He got hurt early in the year. People kind of forget that he got hurt there and kind of missed the season. And they didn't really have much production from the tight end that entire year. The passing game was still awesome. Like, they had so much depth at receiver. I do think Aeneas Williams is going to have a big part in the passing game. So it just might not be one of these things where it has to be that guy who is just that featured guy. And also, too, we don't know about Ian Bremer when he's going to come too. But I mean, outside of that, there isn't like a lot of like huge lingering questions about, like, I'm concerned about this and concerned about that. Don't really have a lot of that coming out of spring.
Yeah. It's interesting because you mentioned tight end, and I want to bring Greg on if he's listening. I just, because this is kind of what's next, right? What's next? What's the next questions that we need to answer here? And I think you're right. For me, it's just tight end, and will that be a factor? And it's interesting because we're going to talk recruiting here in a minute, and Jackson Dollar, and people are like, well, why Notre Dame's tight end you and Notre Dame's this, and it's like, well, yeah, but they didn't really throw much to the tight end last year. The year before, didn't throw a ton to the tight end either. They didn't have a star. Michael Mayer hasn't really been a star in the NFL. Neither is Cole Kmet. So, I mean, yeah, tight end, yeah, they get a lot of guys drafted, but they're not stars in the NFL. And, they're not Brock Bowers like you see from Georgia. And so I'm not sure we're going to get the pass receiving tight end. Do you need that? I don't know, because I think you're going to get a lot of other things, and I do think they'll throw to the backs more this year. I don't know about Nolan James and his receiving ability. I've watched him. He catches the ball fine.
He used to play receiver, Mike. He's a really good receiver.
It seems to have fine hands, but we just haven't seen it, in a game to say where we have with Aeneas. And Aeneas is, I think, as good as Kyron receiving the football. I really think he's that good. And so I think tight end is really the only big question mark for me. We'll see what happens when Charles comes back. We'll see. Hopefully he's ready to go. But, I feel fine with Sullivan Absher right now at right guard. Is he the best option in the world? Probably not, but I think he's been pretty solid every time I've watched him. And, and you're not going to have 5 All-Americans across the offensive line. That's just not going to happen. So what you need is a tough kid and a kid who plays solid football. And that's what they're going to get with him. And then we'll see whether Jugasaw becomes a factor or not this year. But so for me, that's kind of the only question mark. I mean, even kicker, we figured that out, it seems, and even Schmidt has looked much better than he did as a freshman kicking. So I feel good. Greg, any thoughts from you? Any questions that you're a little bit unsure of, that they'll need to address this fall?
Yeah, they didn't. I mean, they didn't really get anything out of any of the tight ends, which is fine. I wasn't really looking for that. And I think the Jackson Dollar thing, I mean, if they miss him, then it's bad in a vacuum because he's a good player. But they just landed Ian Premer. Like, they can obviously land. He's the top tight end in the country last year. I mean, since Michael Mayer, the highest ranked tight end since Mayer, and he's ranked higher than him. So I'm not worried about that. And we like Friesel, so I'm not worried about the Jackson Dollar thing macro wise. It's just micro. He's a good player. You want him in the class. I thought the story of the game was Blake Hebert, to be honest, because everything else is kind of like building depth or whatever. And Hebert, we haven't seen him play really at all. And we haven't, I mean, he should be the backup, right? Like, I think that what we saw from Grubbs was good, fine, right? But Hebert has that kind of, like, he has the legs, he has the size. I thought the fact that he was able to push the ball down the field was really good. He moved the team. I mean, the pass that he made to Elijah Burris, I mean, that's as good a throw as anything, CJ Carr would have put out there. I mean, that's a great throw. Throwing over Talich too, like in the back of the end zone. He
got up there, man.
Yeah, he pushed the ball to Cam Williams.
Yeah,
he did. So that was the biggest thing, because I think everyone kind of looks at this team and there's not a ton of questions or whatever. But if something happens to CJ Carr, right, what's it gonna look like? And I thought the fact that Hebert came in was clean, moved the team multiple times. I was encouraged by that. It's like if he is the floor of what the quarterback room is going to be, then that's as a backup, then that's a really good sign, because I was impressed with the way he moved the team.
Yama, what about you, buddy?
Yeah, I think one of the things with the backup quarterback position, you just wanted to see that those guys like showed enough that they're going to progress into something, because you don't know what it's going to look like when it's really like, things are really happening in a game and you're getting hit and all that. But I think, like, yes, that throw from Hebert, like, that was, if CJ Carr would have thrown that last year, I don't know what some of the media people would have done, because they were like losing it over throws that weren't even close to as good as that. And not saying that obviously he's a great player, but it was kind of ridiculous last year. I think we can admit some of these people were losing it a little too much. And I think too, he's a guy he's mobile. I mean, he had the one scramble, but he can move and he can do stuff. And they would do more things with him in the run game too. So I think it just makes it that, like, everybody kind of thought Teddy Gerard's going to come in and he's going to be the thing. And maybe he will be the backup. I don't know, right? We don't know.
Yeah.
But now
it's like a battle.
It's going to it's a competition.
Absolutely.
Like, they're not moving one of those guys, and one of those guys like Grubbs or Hebert's not getting pushed to fourth when Gerard just comes. That's just, it's not happening right away. Gerard has to earn it. And that's honestly the best thing, because it would have been a bad deal if Gerard came in and it was like, wow, man, they really need Gerard to be the backup. And I don't think that's the case. So I just think overall, like, there's some things that you would say, like, you would have felt better if, hey, Micah Gilbert won that contested catch, against Jaden Sanders. Like, he high pointed that and got it. Yeah, that would have been great. At the same time too, like, he had the other, I would say that one, the ball was a bit underthrown.
It was.
And there was another one too where Carr missed him and kind of overthrew him. I think if you look at Gilbert, he can get vertical. So it's like, can they just connect there and be consistent? But there's just a lot to like there. But what's going to happen when Quincy Porter gets thrown into the mix and all that too, right? So, I just think that they're in really good shape, because you think about, there's going to be players added at each spot, that weren't available in the spring, that are going to be competing right away. And I really think too, like, just that receiver, and Ian Book talked about it on the telecast too. Like, Logan Saldate, in many other years, it'd be like a given that he would be like, well, he's like the fifth guy or something like that, right? He's going to have to battle it out. I don't think it's anything's given to him at all. And I think he's a pretty good player. Like, whenever you see him, he makes plays. He does things well. He's a good athlete, reliable hands and all that. But it just so happens there's Burris and there's Finley. And
I got a question for you guys. I got a question on the receivers. If take out all top three starters in Greathouse, take them out, would Saldate, Burris, Cam Williams, would they all start on the 23 team? So I think they would.
I think there's a good chance. Yeah, I really do. When I look at this situation, as far as the receivers go, I mean, I think it's important that Notre Dame establish that Micah Gilbert is a guy who can help Porter. All right. So now we know you got a couple boundary guys, right? It's important that Notre Dame had somebody step up at field, whether that be Barres, Fitzgerald, or Cam Williams, somebody to kind of step up there that'll allow you to have Jordan Faison, to stay at field if he wants to, but also could play some slot if you want him to. But then you've got Mylan Graham and Jaden Greathouse to play the slot. So now you've got 6-7 guys that I feel like are legit dudes. And just the fact that Gilbert, I think, stepped up really was important, because now you're not gonna have to move anybody else to kind of add depth there, and hopefully Porter's good, and ready to go in the fall. It sounds like he will be, but I think that allows a guy like Barres, a guy like Fitzgerald, and Cam Williams just to focus on one position and not have to worry about moving forward. I'm getting bounced here, because they're young guys, right? They're just trying to learn a position at this point. They're not trying to, start and become the guy. They're just trying to learn. And I like the fact that Notre Dame finally has depth at all these positions, to where a young guy can now just focus, because I think if you can get a young guy like Larry Fitzgerald to come in, or not Larry Fitzgerald, Devin Fitzgerald to come in and as a freshman, if he's trying to learn 2 or 3 different spots, he's not going to be ready to play. But if he can focus on one, now you have a guy who has a chance to really do something. And so I like the wide receiver position. Is it proven? No, but I think the potential is there. And I also think that you've got enough depth right now that even if some of these guys don't pan out, you still got other guys you can plug in there. We were at a time where you may have had one good guy, and then a bunch of guys who just took up slots. They're just guys who just took up slots. They'd run routes, maybe catch a pass now and again, but you weren't expecting them to do anything with the ball once they got it. Now they've got 6 or 7 guys that can make big plays, and it's just night and day. And that, again, is why I don't think you really need a tight end. If you got guys that can stretch the field and hurt you all over the field like they can, plus a back coming out of the backfield in the flats, doing a lot of different things, I think you got enough weaponry to where a tight end doesn't need to be necessarily a dominant player for you. Any thoughts from you, Yama?
Yeah. Although, Mike, I am going to push back on you and saying that I know those guys haven't been studs in the NFL. Cole Kmet was a stud at Notre Dame. Like, he was a difference maker. And obviously Mayer was a great player at Notre Dame. And Mitchell Evans,
I think the guys look at, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think guys look at the NFL is, did you develop me enough to be successful there at the NFL, right? I think that's where these recruits look at it, is here's a guy like a Michael Mayer came in as a 5-star player, and why isn't he now a Pro Bowl player? I think that and like, if I'm an opposing coach, that's what I'm saying, right? That's what I'm saying to Jackson Dollar right now. Cole Kmet came in, he was a high recruit, dominated at this, but yet why is he not a dominant player in the NFL? And doesn't matter that their quarterback play has been terrible, so is their offensive line play has been terrible, but that's not what kids think about, so
yeah.
I always look at it, how do you combat these things? So go ahead.
Yeah. Well, how I actually would combat that too? I would say, well, look at Georgia's tight ends. It's Brock Bowers and nobody else. Because I think for the most part too, it's not like Cincinnati can sell Travis Kelce, and what he's doing at tight end. They're just, it's just one of those positions, Mike, too, where even if you think about Kyle Rudolph, and I know this is a tangent now, but Kyle Rudolph, he had a really good career in the NFL.
He did.
Made a few Pro Bowls, whatever. Like, had pretty good career, but he was never like the best tight end in the NFL. Like, was never that level. Like, he wasn't the guy that we got to make sure that Kyle Rudolph's on your fantasy team. Like, it wasn't like that. It's just one of those things where even though you saw like a ton of guys get drafted over this, it's like, even at the NFL level too, Mike, I think it's the exact same kind of thing. If you have that guy who is a difference maker type of guy, yes, that guy can be an unreal chess piece for you. But
you'd rather have Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase. You'd rather have those two dominant receivers to throw to. And obviously, it's not a bad thing if you got a Kyron Williams to throw and he catches 40 balls or whatever, right? So, which I think Aeneas is going to catch a lot of footballs this year. Like, I think that his numbers, I wouldn't be surprised if he finishes like, top 4 on the team in receptions at all.
Yeah. It's interesting because I see Raymond Horton in here telling me that I'm being pessimistic on Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet had 30 receptions for 347 yards and 2 touchdowns last year. I'm sorry, he's not a star. He's just not. And his production has gone down for the last 3 years.
Yeah.
It's gone down the last 3 years. So, this is what kids think. And, I know people, but look, we're the guys who talk to these kids. All right. We're the ones who talk to them and have conversations with them. And so that's where I come up with these thoughts, because I hear what kids have said over the years about, when you're talking to them privately about this kind of stuff. And so, again,
it helps that Kyle Hamilton is who he is in the NFL. It helps that Kyron Williams is. So exactly to your point, Mike, that is
absolutely,
it is like
they want to know, they want to see young guys who just came out of the league from Notre Dame that are starring in the NFL right now. Yeah. That's what's going to help. That's what's going to help you get more and more players and more talent. And so that's why I think that. All right, let's get on to the recruiting part of it. Jamie, we know we've got all kinds of things happening here as far as recruiting goes. We're expecting news sometime soon on Wonderful Mons, and I think that everybody feels like he's going to be in the class when it's all said and done. You're done at tight end. I want to get to the D-line part because there's a lot of guys that visited and that they're in on and that type of thing. So I want to get to those guys now. But when I look at the situation here, Jamie, the D-line thing is going to be interesting to see how they're going to handle this. And so a lot of people are saying, well, how many are we going to get, and this type of thing. And I started kind of thinking about it. So what we have right now, I think is, Jackson Vaughn comes and visits. I think he's a guy that's going to be somebody that they're very, very high on and somebody they're going to have to pay a lot of money. But if you're going to be recruiting these guys, there's a lot of guys you're going to have to pay. Marcus Fagatu, there's a guy that's got to pay a lot of money if you want him. David Fuller-Unshow, that's another guy you'd have to pay a lot of money. Aiden O'Neill, a lot of money you're going to have to pay. And that's not talking about Abraham Cisse. Yeah. And then, the interesting thing is Notre Dame really, really, really likes Xavier Muhammad as well. So, is he an immediate take right now? I don't know if he's an immediate take, but this is a guy that they really, really like. And so the problem is you can't pay everybody. You cannot pay everybody to come. And so I think a lot of fans are going to be like, oh, well, why didn't we land that guy? Well, you just can't pay every single guy. And so you have to understand, we've heard that Fagatu is, Oregon has promised him from what we've heard allegedly $9 million guaranteed, $3 million a year. I mean, that's crazy. So, the numbers I'd heard on David Jacobs was $2 million. And I've heard that now all this stuff is coming out. Now he may be looking for more money at Ohio State. This is the kind of numbers, and you can't afford to pay everybody. So let's look at it and say, all right, what is Fagatu going to do? I don't know what he's going to do, but it could impact a lot of things. Say he goes to Notre Dame. That's going to be a big price pack that you're going to have to pay. Well, Notre Dame is recruiting for Braden Parks with Oregon as well. So if Oregon suddenly loses him, now they've got a lot of money to pay Braden Parks. And same thing with Ohio State. If Ohio State takes Fagatu, then they can't get involved with a lot of these other guys because they just don't have the money. So it's now a situation where Notre Dame's going to have to figure out the right way to do it. And there's a lot of guys that are going to be in the mix here. And all kind of deciding at the same time. So you bring in a guy like Muhammad, who you really like, but you also have Aiden O'Neal, who's probably going to play 3 technique. You have other guys that could potentially play 3 technique. So what do you do with that? And it's a good problem to have, but when it comes down to the actual numbers of things, it's tough to know. It really is tough to know how this is all going to shake out because you can't get everybody. And let's just say somehow they do get Jackson Dollar. I don't think that's going to happen just based off of things I've heard. But let's just say they did. Well, that's a big check. That's a big check you're going to have to pay. So now you have less money to pay somebody else. And that's the whole thing you got to look at. It's just like the NFL and free agency. You can't take everybody who wants to come. That's for sure. So it's a matter of how do you divvy up the money? How do you decide that this is the thing? And what's the most important thing? And, by the way, if you want Olu at offensive line, you're going to have to pay him a whole bunch of money. Well, does that come from the defensive line money? Does that come from the tight end money? Does it come from a defensive back or Caden Henderson? Or who do you take that money from if you want to pay somebody that kind of money? So that's where it boils down to. And it's going to be nice. It's a nice problem to have, but I don't know. So I'm going to put it to you, Yama. Let's just say you have the money to pay, most of these guys. What would you do? What would you go after? Who would you try and land out of all of these guys?
I mean, I would put most of that money to just overall towards those guys in the defensive line because I just think
I agree.
I mean, you just saw it with Miami. The reason why Miami, Miami obviously they had a bunch of guys drafted. I think they had 9 guys drafted. But the reason why that their defense was what it was because of Ruben Bain and Akeem Messidor. They had 2 first-round picks at defensive end that nobody could block. Nobody, not a single team could block those guys the whole year. So it's just one of those things where if you can get guys of that level that you think that can be of that level, I think that's those are game changers, right? Those are game wreckers. So, and I think when I think about it too, is like, if you're going to put that money like at Jackson, so the Jackson Dollar thing, he's a great player. I think he's going to be an absolute stud, but because you just got Bremer in the last class, you have to look, what are you going to spend that money on tight end in 2 classes in a row? You have to think about it in that way because unless you think for sure, like, hey, this is what we're going to get because we're not going to spend at receiver or something like that too. So I think you have to kind of look at it from like weapons on offense or whatever of like who can be that. And also too, like, Caden Henderson, who by the way, like that was a great job by, Christian and Matt, obviously on Intel every week, but that was a big deal that they, had it in there when he was talking about how Marcus Freeman was assuring him like, no, I'm here from the long haul. Like, yeah, because we hadn't really heard. I mean, we've heard him kind of say it more lately in interviews and all that. Like, the grass isn't always green and all that. But to be that kind of definitive to a recruit where he's like, no, he's telling a guy like that, because it makes a difference. And I think like for him, a guy like Caden Henderson, you wouldn't do it for every linebacker, but it's like, well, if it's a KVA type guy or the Caden Henderson type guy, you would, right? So, so I think that is ultimately like that kind of matters. If you're gonna get Caden Henderson, can you really get him, and can you spend that money? Because that would take away there. But to me, I mean, I don't know what the dollars and cents are, Mike, in terms of what they can and can't pay and what all these guys are going to get. But I would say if you could spend for Fakatu, Folorencho, and Cisse, do it. Like if you can, do it, because there's a very good chance you can win a national championship with these kind of guys, with you, Ronnie Dunham and Ewatade and these guys. Like that's how you build it like that. And
I think that's how I would do it. Parks too. Brandon Parks, you got to get him.
Braden Parks, and too, like the thing is, too, is it's one of these things where I mentioned those 3 guys, but it is one of these things. Like Aiden O'Neal is also a guy like he's a stud. Like there's so and I know that people got upset because there were some guys who just Mekhi Brown like went to USC, whatever, right? Like, and not that he was a good he's a very good prospect, but you just see how it is kind of set up. It's like there's plenty of guys there, and Notre Dame usually isn't in this position where they're competing for all these guys, but they are competing for them. And ultimately, obviously, you got to sell them on the vision of everything. And with Partridge, and it sounds like he did a great job, recruiting and all this stuff too. But yeah, it is a thing where dollars and cents matters.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are thinking Notre Dame's going to get cheap on this. They're not. I mean, they're spending money like crazy, and it's just, yeah. I mean, I think, are they going to be the most money spent? No, I think Texas Tech, Miami, and A&M will probably be those three, and maybe Oregon. But I think Notre Dame's certainly in the top 8, and probably even higher than that when it's all said and done. There's going to be a $40 million roster for sure. There's no doubt about it, and I think that there are certain things that Notre Dame is going to spend on and certain things that they won't. But I've been doing this a long time. D lineman, hardest thing for Notre Dame to get. D lineman, defensive back. Those are the two that they've always struggled to land for the longest time. And it's not just because of the money and this type of thing and not producing these guys. It's also grades and things like that. There's just more guys that just can't get in because of that. And so if you get a chance to take the D-line, more than anything, you spend on that. You can always make up O-line next year, right? Because O-line are always interested in Notre Dame. So if you take a lesser O-line to take a better D-line, absolutely do it this year, because the talent that they have the access to me, is greater than the talent that they would have access to at O-line. I would rather take an elite D-line players than the elite O-line players that are left. I think that they can have more of an impact. And so that's the way I would approach it. And I agree 100% with Henderson. If you can get him interested and pay him, you pay him. You just have to. That guy's, a KVA type of player, and you never let those guys go. And I think when you look at the core or the wide receiver position, sounds like they made a good move with Jackson Coleman. I love this kid. I think he's really good and explosive. And Jamie's loose in the hips for somebody so tall. That's just rare. You see that. Faster than Cade Cooper. I think Cade Cooper has what I'd call elite ball skills. You go up, you throw the ball anywhere near him, he's coming down with the ball. That's what I love the most about Cade Cooper. And Notre Dame hasn't had one of those since the kid that was Pittsburgh.
Oh, Chase Claypool.
Chase Claypool. Yeah, they haven't had somebody like that since Claypool. And so to me, I mean, I think that they're going to be okay at wide receiver if they can land Coleman, Cooper, and Julius Jones Jr., which is certainly a prospect of that. It sounds like Asante Gales is still interested. They're going to be working that. And then, tight end. I like Titus Hawk, right? And I think Titus Hawk is a good take after you have Bremer, right? Because I think Bremer's got the body that's going to play right away, and Frizzell and Titus Hawk have the body that's going to take a little bit. But once they get that body developed, they're going to be very, very good players. Both of them are developmental players, but I think that the ceiling is very, very good for both those guys. And so I would like that. I think that would be good. At O-line, I don't know what's going to happen there. I personally, I like Olu. I think he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. I really do. I'm not sure if you pay him a crazy amount to get him here, because I'm not sure he's way above the other guys at this point. I think he's a guy that has a huge upside, but he's got a ways to go as far as, being a polished product and that type of thing. But his upside's as good as you're going to find. But I like the other guys. I think that they look like they have a chance to be really good players, and then to me, I think the one thing that's a big kind of concern right now, the only concern is what happens at linebacker. I just don't know. I mean, you and I both love Sean Fox, but still no visit. Shocked by that. Really am shocked by that. Why is that? I'm surprised they haven't scheduled anything at this point. And again, the coaches will be out on the road. Some coaches will be out on the road. It'll be more the assistant coaches, I think, and some of the recruiting staff. But and so they're going to be trying to set up the remaining official visits. They'll get in the schools and all that, and try and do that. But linebacker is the one that's kind of you just don't know what to expect. Sounds like they still got a real good shot at Roman Igwebuike. I like him. I think he's a good player, but still nothing with Glover or Joaquin Gouda as far as visits at this point. So that's the one kind of place on the recruiting, I guess, roster or target list that I'm just not sure about. Any thoughts from you here?
Yeah, one thing I kind of found really interesting this year compared to last year, Mike. Well, I think it just in general, when I'm just not even just reading Notre Dame targets, but just everybody, is those official visit dates. It's like way more competitive now, where guys aren't locked into as many official visits. There's a lot of guys who are like, I got 2 scheduled, and then I'm figuring out the rest. Like, there's a lot of that, and I don't know if that's to deal with NIL money or just like who knows what it's all about or whatever. But I did find that really interesting. That is the thing with a lot of guys, a lot of guys, that even you would say their interest is strong in most of these schools. It's like, wow, that it's kind of surprising, but maybe that's just the way it is. Maybe that's just like part of the whole deal now with like agents and all that stuff. But
I think that's what it is.
Yeah.
Agents are sitting there telling them, look, get your top guys, your top schools that you want, get them locked in, and then let's just see what everybody wants to do. Right. I think that's what's happening. And let's get the competition amongst everybody who wants those other 3 slots, offering more money. So then we can drive up the 2 that you really want to go see. Right. That, I think, is what you're seeing happening with this. And I noticed the same thing, Jamie. It's just before guys would have 5 locked in like this, and they were immovable, and most of them wouldn't even take the 5. My guess is most of these guys won't even take 5 visits. They'll take 2 or 3 tops, and that'll be it. But the idea of having it open is to get the competition amongst these guys to keep the number going up, so the agent can then go to the 2 schools you are really interested in and say, well, you know what, Oregon's saying they're going to pay this. So I don't know, man, he's starting to get really interested in it. And I mean, I would hate to be a GM, man. I would hate to be a GM. It would drive me crazy. It really would. All right. We're going to get this. Go ahead.
Well, no, I was just going to say, like, even at linebacker, where I do, it is murky of like what is going to happen there. It is just one of those positions too, where you want, I first of all, I really like Amari Irvin. If he stays committed and he's in the class, like I think he's a really, really good player. But they don't need like big numbers there. So it's just different.
If you got a stud, you could take 2. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but to me, that is the one position, because obviously at DB, they just got a couple DB commits. And they've already got another 2 in the fold that I really liked as well. So they're golden there. And I think they're going to be fine at defensive line when it goes, even though they don't have a commit yet, but it's like, yes, I think they're going to be more than fine there. It's I would say linebacker more than anything is just like the one spot where you're like, where are they going to figure it out? But I think they will get it figured out eventually.
Yeah. All right. Get to a couple of questions here. Was there any one player in the spring game that surprised or played above the level expected? I'd say Ebert, and let's be honest. I mean, I think Ebert, I've been critical of him, but it's been based on intel inside Notre Dame, right? I think when he first got there, I had some questions, and then I talked to somebody in the fall as well, and that person basically said, look, long way to go. Great kid, good work ethic, just a long way to go accuracy-wise, and just knowing what to do. And you got to give the kid a lot of credit. I mean, he looks I mean, we've seen a lot of backup quarterbacks look a lot worse than that. We certainly have, and so and then I think Noah Grubbs was a surprise too. I just the accuracy with Noah Grubbs, we just didn't see that on film in high school, and made a number of throws, and so I feel a lot better about that. But I would say those two. Anybody that stands out to you, Jamie?
I think Hebert's the one, because everybody else that I thought like did well wasn't really like surprising to me at all. Like, it's like Ethan Long. Yeah, he played great. Unsurprising. We just spent like the past year kind of just raving about him, so it's like, I don't think there was anything like that, or even to say like some of the other young guys who made plays. I just think with him, he was someone we knew the least about. And we didn't even get a chance to see him in the scrimmage last week. And now we got like a full view of him, and I thought, he was, impressive and better than I expected.
Yeah. All right, Dave wants to know: is it time to get rid of the blue gold game? It's just kind of basically saying it really doesn't do much. He'd rather see a scrimmage, or he'd rather see watch drills. I don't get that at all, man. I mean, I want to see these guys banging into each other. I mean, that's when, and you can't really learn about somebody running drills or a pro day, or you can't learn anything about it. You want to see them in a competitive environment. And, the blue gold game is about watching Kowakia. It's about, watching Chaston Smith. It's about watching, what has Cam Herron done? And how do they handle a game type of atmosphere, right? You can't get Porath the kind of heat that he needs without 45,000 fans yelling and everybody trying to create that kind of environment. So it's about putting players in game-like situations so you can see how they react, because a lot of times players in practice react differently than players in the game. Your thoughts here?
I think the blue goal game has been like this for a long time too, Mike. I don't think that it's been any different. So I also too, watch, if you have Big Ten Network, watch some of those schools that do we're just doing drills. It's like watching paint dry. It's not an entertaining thing. 45,000 people don't want to be in a stadium to see, individual
individual drills. Yeah.
They don't want to see that. Or even if you're doing one-on-ones in that setting, even though it might sound exciting when we're there at practice, whenever, when it's like in a small environment, it's not that thing, but it can be exciting. There can be good things.
Oh, sure.
But no one is raving about, usually in one-on-ones, there's like a really good, exciting something that happens one every like 5 passes. You know how boring that is for like a fan to watch that? They don't want to see it. They don't want to see, all of a sudden it's like, well, they just decided to run a slant here instead of a go ball, because they're not going to run all go balls all the time, right? In one-on-ones. That's not how it works. So it's just, I don't know. And as Greg pointed out in the chat too, 45,000 people just showed up for the spring game. I don't think they're going to get rid of it.
Well, yeah, I agree. And then I think too, watch individual drills, right? And then watch a special teams practice. You'll want to leave halfway through. It's boring. It just is. There's nothing entertaining about it. I mean, watching them work on fundamentals is not exciting. And we know this because that's usually what we get to see, so it is when you get, that's why everybody was so excited after the first practice that I was there. We never get to see them go 11 on 11 in the first practice and do it 4 different times. That never happens. And so then you get the practice reports and it's exciting because stuff actually happens. And so that, trust me, it would be much more boring any other way. All right. Let's see. After the Jersey scrimmage, are you more excited about the upcoming season or less? And to be honest with you, I am more excited about it because I think there's questions that have been answered, but also they got through the whole thing without any catastrophic injury. And there's always 1 or 2, it seems, that just kill you. and then a few in the fall that also hurt. And the fact that they didn't happen this spring, that's the best news you could ask for. So, anything thoughts from you, Jamie?
I'm just gonna say, Mike, that even in 2016, it obviously did not go good in that season. But even in that spring, when you're just watching them like scrimmage in during that spring, I was more excited about the team than I was before. I think it's just natural.
Yeah.
You're first of all, everyone's dying for football. You see the positives, because in the spring, you're always just going to see the positives too, right? Because the other thing is, if guys are not that great and there's concerns, it's like, okay, well, maybe they can get it fixed. I think it would be impossible. Even the most pessimistic person alive could just see there's not a lot of weaknesses on the team. Like, even the things that we question are small questions compared to a lot of other programs. So no doubt more excited.
Okay, let's get to the rest of the questions here. Any indication if Partridge is an average, good, or great recruiter? Well, I mean, I'll say this: he's been able to get a bunch of elite players to visit, and a bunch of elite players to understand his message and the things that he's accomplished as a coach, and he's been able to get them to come back multiple times. To me, that is a sign of a very, very, very good recruiter. And you got to give Seabass, Nick Sebastian, a lot of credit too, because he's very, very heavily involved in this, and I mean heavily involved. But those two are tag teaming it and doing a fantastic job. And so I couldn't be more pleased. And he had the same problem that Brian Jenny and Campbell have as well, which is coming in late. You don't have a relationship with all these guys, but done a really good job. And I think Nick, really helped that. He when he knew the situation, he knew that the Wash was leaving early and going to be the linebackers coach. So he had to step up and really kind of keep that whole thing together. So I think he did a fantastic job with that. And we got to give him a lot of credit as well. All right. Let's see. Rodney Dunham or Aaron Lynch, comparing as a prospect at this stage and hype of their careers. What do you think, Jamie?
I mean, Aaron Lynch was obviously super exciting, freshman, and what he showed. I didn't get to watch him really like in the spring, like in person at that time. So I can't speak on that. I'll just say that I remember watching him during that 2011 season. And yeah, he was obviously showed incredible flashes during that time, but he was not a good run defender and
played out of control.
And
yes.
I'm not saying that Rodney Dunham is like, man, this guy's elite at setting the edge yet or anything like that. Just watching him in practice, watching the Blue Gold game, I think he is miles ahead in that department.
Agree.
Which is why I think that, yes, he can contribute as a pass rusher. He's going to be in the rotation. He is like,
no question.
He's going to be in the rotation where, if you recall, Mike, remember early on in that season, Lynch, they were like, they didn't play him probably because he was like, didn't know the defense and didn't all this stuff. I don't think none of that stuff's going to be a problem with Dunham. So
if you listen to Partridge, I mean, and this is how you can tell. If you listen to the coach and the coach is saying, kid's work ethic is outstanding. He retains things very, very well. He understands what we're doing here. You hear that as a true freshman, man, sky's the limit, because you've already seen what he can do physically.
Yeah.
But that's the part that's the hardest thing. And I can't speak because I've never been a defensive lineman, but from my understanding, that is one of the hardest things to do once you get to the college level, is just understand how to play at this level. And it's not all about just quickness, right? There's a lot of things you got to learn about playing with leverage, playing with your hands, things that you've just never had to do in high school because you were just bigger than everybody.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add there?
Faster, stronger. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. And I would say too, like you could say Aaron Lynch, obviously he never really fully lived up to his kind of vast potential. There's a lot of other stuff that went along with it that contributed to it.
Yes.
But I would say everybody kind of knew. Anyone who watched him at Notre Dame knew that his ceiling was as high as he wanted it to be. He could be as great as he wanted it to be.
Sure.
And I think it's the same thing with Rodney Dunham, to be honest, but he's just got some of these other pieces that probably make it more likely that he's going to reach his ceiling.
Yeah, I think so. I really, really excited about him. I think he's going to be a really, really good player. And last question, is Dunham a Boubacar backup only or a strong side defensive end? Seemed to play well quite a both ways in the spring game. And then what do you think Carr's next step is to making him even greater? He says he needs to improve on his deep balls. And I agree. I think Carr's been pretty accurate in deep balls, but not the most accurate. But I think that he improved as the year went along. I just think he had a rough day. It just wasn't his best day. And if you ask anybody about any other practice, he was been lights out. So I just think he just had a rough day. It wasn't the best thing. And I'll let you handle the Dunham thing.
Yeah, well, first of all, they don't have strong side and Viper anymore. They don't call it that. It's just left and right. So he played both sides. I imagine that they're playing on both sides because you just want to get a young guy to just get used to it and not just be like one-sided the whole time. But also too, like, let's just say he is the third defensive end and it's like he's actually becomes that guy, or the third or fourth or whatever. Well, or if there's an injury, if he's the next best guy in, you want him in, right? You don't care that it's, he can only play the left side. No, you want to do that. So I think especially for the guys that are the second and third team guys, you want to mix and match and play different spots, because you don't want those guys to do anything, which is why I think even too, it's a different position, obviously, but Jaden Sanders, he plays boundary in the spring game, was playing nickel too. It's like, that just adds so much value that if he can be the next guy in at this spot or that spot, that's huge. And I think that, like, one thing I was going to just quick aside on Sanders, Jaden Sanders, for when Leonard Moore's gone, Jaden Sanders and Aiden Pouncey, I always call him Ethan, his brother, but Aiden Pouncey, those are probably the guys who are going to be the boundary guys competing there. And obviously one of those guys, they're both, and we did hear some good stuff, really good stuff about Pouncey at the end of spring too. So
very much so. Yeah.
They're unsurprisingly, I'm excited about the DBs they got.
Yeah. I love the fact that Pouncey's still playing corner. You know what I mean? That's a big thing. It just is. And I know they don't need him at safety, but not only playing at corner, but is running second string at corner. You know what I mean? As a guy that is getting in there and playing a considerable amount. And, because there are some good corners, good quality guys that are on the roster right now. So, so I think that says a lot about his potential. All right. Well, that's going to be it, folks. I hope you enjoyed that. We will be back next week on Power Hour, and hopefully we'll be talking about some commitments and, lots going on with recruiting. So going to be a fun here, May and June, and then I cannot wait for the season. I am very, very excited about this Irish team. I think this is going to be one of the best years they've had, and I think they got a chance to win it all. I really do. That's going to be it, folks. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you next week on Power Hour.